Tiffany Guarnaccia, the CEO and founder of Kite Hill PR. We're celebrating our 10-year anniversary, gathering some of the best and the brightest to share the lessons that they've learned along the way to inspire future leaders. I'm here with Shannan Herbert today. Shannan, please introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about what you do.
Thank you, Tiffany. Hello, my name is Shannan Herbert. I'm EVP of Inclusive Credit for Stratyfy. We are a women-led, woman co-founded financial technology firm focused on accelerating financial inclusion. Our products help lenders detect harmful bias in their decision-making models. We help them understand where the bias is coming from and how to undo it.
I love that you're part of a women-led business and women-founded, as are we. And a big part of what we've done along the way, just who we are as a business and our culture, is look at how we can help other women advance in their career, which is why we're having today's conversation. So when you think about your career, you have so much great experience. And when you think about some of the things you've learned along the way, maybe you can start by telling me a little bit about, have you ever taken a leap of faith in your career?
Absolutely. My current role is in the tech space. Prior to that, I spent about 23 years as a commercial banker on the credit and risk side. So my career was very linear. I took the steps that I was supposed to take based on my career path. And late last year, I said, this opportunity is here. Why not? Let's jump into a space that you don't know much about, but you do know how important it is. And the way that innovation is impacting financial services just makes a whole lot of sense given your background. And so I did it, and I have loved every minute of it.
That's fantastic, especially today when we look at the opportunities that are created in the tech industry, even off the back of the pandemic, when we think about the different impacts that we've had in a work from anywhere environment. There's a lot of women out there that are thinking, I'd love to seize this kind of opportunity. I want to take this leap of faith. I want to change my career. But sometimes fear gets in the way, right? Fear of failure. When you were making that decision, did you rely on mentors and advice from mentors to guide your decision?
Oh, absolutely. Advice from role models, advice from peers, advice from anyone that would sit down and have a conversation with me. And it didn't have to be a formal structure. It was me having a network of people that I could call that I had made friends with over the years or connected with over the years that I could really ask these questions of, because I had never taken this type of leap before. And so I needed to talk to people that had either done it or were already in this space that could kind of prepare me for what was coming ahead. But a lot of it still rested with me. I had to feel confident that I could do the job that was being asked of me. I had to feel confident that this leap would be a good one, but also that if there was failure, that it was okay because I was resilient enough to get up and do something else.
That's such a good point. Do you feel like in failure and failure that there's something you learned from that in your career? Has there been a failure that you'd say, this is something that happened that I've learned from, and how have you adjusted your way forward from that?
Absolutely. First of all, failure is a great experience for growing, or a place to learn a lot of lessons. And so I would say that failure, it shouldn't be seen as something negative per se. Take what you're supposed to take from that failure so that it doesn't happen again. When I think about a failure in my career, it was, centered around asking questions, not asking enough questions or not asking the right questions. And so what that has done is, one, allowed me to ask more questions now when I'm in situations where that's necessary, but also encourage people that work for me to do the same. Ask me questions, lots of them. If we leave a meeting and you still have questions, text me, call me. Just keep asking those questions, because my fear was, if I ask the question, someone's going to hear that and think that I'm not smart enough, I'm not qualified to be here, I shouldn't be here, I should have already known that. When in fact, asking questions is a sign of brilliance, because now you know exactly what it is that you're dealing with. You've gotten it all out there and you have a full understanding of the scenario so that you can better respond.
That's such a great point. I love that mindset. Just be curious. Have an open mind, ask questions, and ask deeper questions to be able to educate yourself and showcase that curiosity along the way.
Mhm, mhm.
When someone's looking to change their career, what other advice would you offer them in learning a new industry?
Well, really know what it is that you want. I think that one of the things that, at least for me, knowing what I wanted early on was dictated by what I saw other people doing and what the next, step was supposed to be for my career. And so I shaped everything based on that. But once I really sat down and said, okay, well, these are the things that matter to me. These are the things that fulfill me. These are the things that bring me joy in my work. Where can I find all of these things and what should I be doing to make all of these things a reality? That's when things started to fall into place for me. So if anyone is thinking about changing a career or changing a path, sit down and really map that out. What does it look like? What do you want? What does happiness look like in this role? What does success look like in this role?
I love that. If you're thinking about changing your career, it's not only being curious, think about what brings you joy, what matters to you, and map out your career path against that. That's so inspirational. I really appreciate that perspective. And it's something that people can model when they're looking about making some of these big decisions. And we talk about the inspiration that you find along the way. And one of the things that someone's deciding on when their next step in their career is not only what brings them joy, but they think about their own value. How do you think someone can showcase their own value?
Well, I think it comes down to knowing what that is. What do you bring to the table? What are those things that you're really, really good at doing? And those things that have been praised before? Where are those areas where maybe you need a little bit more help to get there, but you also know that they're important and they're valuable in the setting that you're trying to enter. So I would say really knowing what your value proposition is. These are the things that I'm just fantastic at. And I'm going to bring these to your organization. And this is how I'm going to show up every day. You're never going to have to worry about this bucket of skills or this bucket of expertise. I'm always going to bring this with me, and showcasing that in a way that makes the listener understand how you fit within that organization, but how you can help drive whatever initiative they're working on, contribute to revenue, bottom line, or help them expand into a new market that they may not have considered before.
That's such great advice and showcasing your value. It's looking at what you bring to the table, your hard skills and soft skills, but also the goals of the organization and how
Mhm.
you personally can be the one to advance the organization. When you think about some of the skills overall, do you feel like some skills were the hardest to learn, or maybe one skill that was hardest to learn? And what did you do to develop it?
So the hardest skill for me to learn was speaking in front of audiences and sharing personal information about myself, similar to what we're doing right now. This is the skill that I am still trying to master, a muscle that I'm trying to build. And so what I started doing was just volunteering and signing up for more opportunities to do that because I want to be comfortable with this. I want to be able to share my lived experience with audiences because when I do, I find that it resonates. I find that the message that I'm trying to deliver lands every time because now I'm relatable. Now the information that I'm delivering is relatable and someone can absorb that and take that and go and do something else with it. And so I'm trying to do more of this and expand myself and be more vulnerable because it matters. And the work that I do is so impactful that I have to speak more about it. And people generally want to hear about impactful works to figure out how they could implement that in their own situations.
That's fantastic. I always say in every challenge, there's an opportunity. So you saw that challenge and you like rose to the occasion. You're looking at the opportunities that you're creating for yourself and for others. If you were giving advice to a rising star who wanted to be in a role that's similar to yours, what's the best advice you could give them?
Do not let the lack of diversity discourage you. I recognize that the tech space is there aren't a lot of women, especially when you look across the board. There aren't a lot of Black women, not a lot of women that look like me. But I would say that we need more women from diverse backgrounds to do the type of work that we're doing. the folks that have been harmed by bias and unfair lending practices, who better than them to work on solutions for eradicating bias and unfair lending practices. And so I think, again, having that lived experience drive your work and fuel that passion for change is important. And so I would say that anyone that wants to do that kind of work should jump on board.
I couldn't agree with you more. I think that's such an important perspective to have. Does that, when you looked at kind of being in the industry, were there certain leaders that you kind of admired their style, or other women that you said, this is a great example of leadership and mentorship, and I want to emulate that, and why?
Well, interestingly enough, one of the best examples of leadership came from a former executive at a bank where I worked. And this executive was so warm and genuine with everyone in the organization. Didn't matter where you were, what your title was, none of that mattered. He was just, I want to connect with as many people as I can. And there was this empathy that he showed to everyone throughout the organization. So much so that you wanted to do a good job for him. You wanted to show up every time because of the way that he treated you. And I've taken that just and infuse that into my own management style and the way that I interact with people and treat people, because you always, you always want to be mindful of someone's journey. You always want to be respectful of someone's perspective. But you create this trust with the people that you work with, the people that you work for, the people that work for you, because now you've shown your vulnerable side. You've let down that wall a little bit and shared things with them. They feel comfortable sharing things with you. And it just makes for a really, really nice working environment.
That is such a great perspective, is like showing your vulnerable side. I have to admit, that was something in early on in my career, it's really hard for me as well, right? Because you want to be the one that is steady in the storm, of course, but always strong and not showing a sign of weakness. And you're modeling behaviors that maybe you've seen in the past from other leaders. But what you realize along the way is that it's so important to lead with empathy and to go
Mhm.
deeper and to look at how you can be a leader that's set up for success. And I do believe that when you look at the future leaders of the 21st century, it's really leading with empathy is one of those key qualities that we're really starting to lean into more. And that makes a better workforce and a better approach to culture overall. So if you were speaking to that leader that you were thinking about emulating with, or other leaders, what advice would you give them to help send the elevator back down, to help advance others?
Yeah, so I would say, again, know what you want. And I mean, really know what it is that you want. Going back to my career and thinking about the path that I took, it was very linear, very much dictated. These are the steps you need to get to this next spot. And I got to the top spot. I was chief credit officer in the organization. And I looked around and I said, okay, so what's next? What's that next thing? Because I don't see myself doing this for the next 20, 30 years. And so I had to really figure out, okay, what does the future look like for me? And what are those things that I want? So I would say figure out the want and then align everything in your professional life to match with that want, so that it becomes a reality. Align yourself with professionals that are in those roles. Sign up to network with people that are doing the kind of things that you want to do. Sit and talk to people and listen and learn. Again, doesn't have to be formal, but just sit and talk to the folks that are doing those things to figure out if this is where you really want to be.
That's such a great point. I want to come back to that when you mentioned about kind of taking a leap of faith and changing your career. We talked a little bit about how you leaned on other mentors, and some of that structure is formal. But to your point about it doesn't have to be a formal relationship, how should people maybe challenge the notion of mentorship today?
Yeah, I think that mentor, when I think about mentor, I think about a mentoring program that I was in when I was a teenager, where there were a group of young girls that would come, and every Saturday we'd sit with them and we'd talk about their homework and their feelings and, how they were navigating middle school. And that was great. As a professional, what I think we need to look for are a couple of things. One, mentorship that leads to sponsorship. So it's great to have someone that you can talk to about your career and how to map out your career path, but then what's next? Because I'm looking for that what's next piece. Where do I go from here? How do I use everything that you're telling me to get to that next level? And so I would be looking for that sponsorship, open a door for me, introduce me to someone, so that it's, so that we're moving in the right direction. But then I also think that there's not a real formal structure or guidebook to mentorship. You can find mentors anywhere. Start with a role model, those folks that you admire, and then reach out to them or go to someone that does something similar to that person. I use LinkedIn a lot to reach out to people that I think are interesting. This person sounds interesting. They have a really interesting title, or they work for a really interesting organization. And I'll reach out and just connect. And I've done that. And surprisingly, folks will respond and say, hey, thank you for reaching out to me. That's great. Let's have coffee. Let's talk. But this is how these relationships are built organically. And those are the most genuine and fun relationships that I have. The structure piece doesn't necessarily have to be there for it to be effective.
That's such a great point, Shannon. I think even in that first part of the response, you nailed it. Young professionals should look for mentorship that leads to sponsorship. It goes well beyond the typical framework that we'd have, or it's not just giving advice. It's how do I really inform my career? How do I continue to advance from there? Anything else to share?
I think we've covered quite a bit, but I'll just go back and reiterate one point about knowing your value and your worth and what you bring to the table. I think that guides a lot of what I do now. And it took me a while to figure that part out. But once I did, I was able to say yes to the things that aligned with how I valued myself and how I viewed myself, and say no to the things that didn't feel right. And I guess that's, listening to your intuition and your gut, but really, really defining, who you are, what you want, and what you bring to the table, I think will serve anyone well.
That's such great advice. The end takeaway, know your value and really start to think about how you can shape your career from there. Well, Shannon, thank you so much for sharing your perspectives today. Really appreciate it. And thank you for your time.
Thank you.